Hi, this is Mohammad Sharif. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Central Florida. So I'm specializing in emergency management in my doctoral dissertation. And so this poster today here at the Public Administration Research Conference is part of my dissertation project. So here is more about, in general, I'm working with the mental health support systems for the emergency managers and first responders. So most of the time when we talk about emergency management and the response and recovery programs or mitigation programs, it comes with most of the time the communities that gets affected by the disasters, but we often forget about the people who work for them, who rescue them, who works in the response and recovery phases. So what happens is, like, we often forget the unsung heroes of the disasters, and that's where my project is. So here, my project is most about the mental health support systems. So, and what happens in an event system perspective. So in light of event system theory, we see like how not an individual professional, but how the organizational systems and institutional mechanisms support the emergency management professionals, and also how they get the best out of formal and informal supports. So it's not about the formal only, but informals as well. In light of event system theory, we found like, okay, so what are the event characteristics? What are the strengths, durations, and novelty, and how the policy mechanisms and institutional support systems available there, and whether the organizational supports are fragmented or integrated in the system, or whether they prioritize formal or informal. So we took Hurricane Ian as one of the major disasters in recent history in Florida, how it impacted Florida, not only by the hurricane, but the aftermath of hurricane with prolonged floods as well. And that's where we found like, okay, so we analyzed out of 23 counties most affected by Hurricane Ian as identified by Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. And we analyzed 9 after-action reports from county levels, and also we interviewed some expert members who responded in Hurricane Ian. So that's where we also found the key findings as well, like how the prolonged support for a disaster affects the mental health support systems, how the fragmented institutional support systems, like there are lack of coordination and communication between the organizations to collaborate with their own mechanisms or their support systems. There are some structural barriers and limited access as well. There are like reliance on informal coping mechanisms, but the informal coping mechanism has been found also very helpful for the professionals. And also in the relevant literatures, there are some space or some impact from the event-driven funding, where the funding comes in the response phase mostly, but in the long run, when it comes for the mental health support systems, for the professionals, the funding goes away. So that event-driven funding or episodic funding, that also is a big concern for continuing the support for the long run. And here we have seen, like, when we analyze the after-action reports, the mental health is not very well represented, but when we interviewed the people, they always prioritize, like, yes, that's one of the major area to focus in the emergency management system should be. So, and to conclude, like, so there should be a more integrated approach, and that's where I'm working on, and that's where how the behavioral health support systems can be more integrated into the organizational priorities, organizational policies, and funding mechanisms, and how the sustained institutional support system is necessary for responders' resilience, and how the future disaster governance should prioritize the mental health for not only for the community people, but also for the emergency management professionals as well. So that's where I'm working on, and hope to bring out with more findings in the future when I complete my dissertation. Thank you.
My name is Dewitt. I am a second-year PhD student at the School of Public Administration at the University of Central Florida. My research is looking at innovation districts and knowledge-based urban developments and their broad impact from a neighborhood revitalization perspective, specifically looking at social infrastructure or places where people gather, think parks, civic centers, incubators, and their impact on social capital development, and how that can then downstream create a positive loop from a co-creation standpoint that includes neighboring communities in the development process of these sorts of developments. So this research is sort of part one of a broader research agenda, just doing a systematic literature review of both the innovation district literature from a broad community impact perspective, and then also social infrastructure from the perspective of developing inter and intra-community social capital, right? With the idea being that if these are spaces that could develop bridging social capital between the knowledge-based communities on site and these largely historically disinvested communities that are often neighboring these sorts of developments, like here in Central Florida and downtown Orlando, that might create avenues for trust building and then eventually kind of a co-development virtuous cycle over time. So first was looking at the innovation district literature on kind of that broad community impact from a place-based perspective. And then second was looking at social infrastructure and social capital development and trying to find those intersections between the two bodies of literature, creating propositions, and then developing the research agenda from there.
Hi everyone, my name is Kat Wilson-McCoy. I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of Central Florida in the Public Affairs program. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this study. This is also my dissertation, the effect of quality of life ordinances on the perceptions of police legitimacy among homeless populations. I conducted focus group interviews of about 20 people experiencing homelessness on their perceptions of the police as legitimate actors of authority. This idea was kind of born from the rising homelessness rates here, well, nationwide, but also specifically in Central Florida. And so, again, I started with focus group interviews and asked questions about what are their interactions with the police? Do they feel like they're being treated fairly? How likely are they to cooperate with the police? And often what I found based on the interviews is that fairness, respect, and bounded authority tend to shape legitimacy. But most compliance among people experiencing homelessness was based out of fear and not actual respect. And so themes included enforcement as criminalization. Many people feel like they were being punished because they are homeless. Many described situations where rather than receiving citations or warnings, they were immediately arrested. Many stated that they wouldn't be likely to cooperate with the police just out of fear or that the possibility that they might be arrested. And so going forward, my plan is to also interview law enforcement officers, specifically those here in Central Florida, to get their perspective, to see what these interactions are like or shaping out to be, and go from there.
My name is Jude Hagan, and I'm presenting my research on Florida local public administrator perspectives on decentralized wastewater treatment.
I served as a preliminary framework for research on a subject that has very little existing research.
My name is Johnathan Boris. I am a second semester Master of Science in Urban and Regional Planning student here at the University of Central Florida.
My name is Samuel Arndt. I am a first semester student in a Master's of Urban and Regional Planning here at UCF in the School of Public Administration. Our research is exploring the impacts of microtransit on urban environments. We are under the supervision of Dr. Christopher Hawkins and Dr. Meijing Li. So the background of the service is Ride DTO, which is operated under the company called Circuit Transit, opened up in October of 2024. They have operated for the past year and a half, which we are here to analyze the impact that it's had on the built environment of Orlando, as well as interviewing commuters and business owners to interview them for improvements, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and how they can make the service overall better.
Right now we're in the early stages of the study, but we've developed a plan where we're going to be riding the service. So the methodology behind our study, currently we are in the early stages, but we are studying the effects of the built environment before and after October 2024, when the service was debuted. We are looking on Google Maps on the street view on streets that are within the Ride DTO service area. And so we're comparing the pictures there, and if there's data available post-October 2024, We'll see if there's any differences in like the way the street was designed, like sidewalks or bus ramps or anything like that. And if there's not data available, we will go out into the street and take notes using something called the Built Environment Assessment Tool. And so we are like taking notes at various parts within in kind of a grid-like area. So like we'll be doing it at intersections and in between intersections.
Yes.
As for collecting the data related to the ride DTO experience, we will be riding the service with passengers, and we will be asking them questions about the service, such as like how do they feel about the service? Like if the service did not exist, like what alternative transportation method would you have used, and other things of that nature. And we also interview businesses in the area, see how they affect, like see if they have like more or less business as a result of this, if there's like, and determine if there's any changes.
We have expected results in the future applications because one of the important core or a very pragmatic approach to this is that in a year and a half, microtransit really won't have that much of an impact. I honestly, the only thing we found is that a building is painted differently, and that was like 6 months ago. But this is more of a pilot study to figure out how years from now, how assessments of the built environment and comparisons should be conducted. So the overall point is, this is how these individuals did it before. Let's mimic that so we can compare the results. In fact, the reason, I don't have the picture up here, but the reason we're doing it in a grid fashion, is so that I plan on developing a Python model of a 3D data cube, a data cube of all the data for each individual segment intersection. That's why currently it's a 13 by 13 grid, just up and down like that, certain streets. And so it's easy to pick out certain parts of that grid. It's a very pragmatic approach. We might not find many differences. However, any differences we do find would be great. Mostly it's a pilot study. Just set a baseline for Orlando at least.